show, Hiba.
Thank you, Megan.
I'm so excited to introduce you. What a great value that you and your firm will bring to our association. Hiba Anver, she's actually a partner with Erickson Immigration Group, named one of the top immigration attorneys for startups, Business Insider. Your practice's focus is on employment-based non-immigration visa and green card process, as well as I-9 compliance. We'll be excited to learn a lot about that. And you also lead an international team that manages clients in a variety of industries. Obviously, esports, e-commerce, investment, education, oncology, to name a few areas. You advise corporate clients on complex immigration matters that result from corporate restructuring, including mergers, acquisitions, and reductions in Air Force, in team force, not Air Force. So welcome to the show and welcome to the organization. We're so glad to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about, how you found the Esports Trade Association, what your journey has been to be the first immigration and or just attorney, and obviously you've got a great story coming all the way from Pakistan. And we're really excited to hear about, your passion and what you've done and what you're continuing to do.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you again for chatting with me today. And I would love to share my story. I am a proud daughter of immigrants, first generation born in the United States. Both of my parents are from Pakistan. And as you mentioned, and as we kind of discussed before today's episode, I am the first attorney in my family's history on both my dad's side and my mom's side. I think that a lot of folks who are born to immigrant parents will probably relate to this, but growing up first generation, sometimes you feel like you have one foot in one world and the other in another world. And so it gives you a very unique perspective. In my case, I felt like it helped me be a bit more empathetic to people who perhaps had fewer resources or less knowledge, less access. And one thing that I realized, I think I was senior year of college, so maybe a little late in the game, but one thing that just really kind of hit me was, if there are things that I don't like about the system, the best way to make a difference, and change the system is to first understand the system. So that was really kind of my motivation for wanting to become a lawyer. I hate bullies. I hate that there are some people who get treated differently. Long story short, it was a lot of those kind of like sentiments that led me to my decision to become a lawyer. Once I graduated law school, and when I was in the process of identifying which area of law I wanted to focus on, the reason I ended up choosing immigration law is because, in my opinion, it is a extremely complete and diverse area of law. So, for example, if an attorney wants to focus on more business-oriented or transactional matters, you can do employment-based immigration. If you want to work more closely with individuals, you can do family-based immigration. If you want to do something that is a bit more philanthropic or humanitarian, you can work with asylum cases, and you can help refugees or victims of human trafficking or crimes or domestic violence. If you are the type of lawyer who wants to go to court, you can do that. If you are the type of lawyer who wants to litigate via written advocacy, you can do that. And then the other thing that I really like about it is uniform in all 50 states because it's federal law. So it did also offer a certain degree of freedom. So I chose immigration law as a result, and I have been doing it for the vast majority of my career.
Wow. Yeah, that's very interesting. And You said something about having your foot or your feet in two worlds.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that. And touch more upon that. Tell me more about that, because that's very interesting.
So I can only speak from my specific perspective and based on my story, right? But you kind of grow up knowing that even though you're an American born and raised in the United States, you're not 100% like the others because they don't necessarily view you as one of them. I mean, first you have very kind of like kind of visual and visible differences, right? As a person of color, your skin color is different, your hair is different. And then also, coming from a family where your parents are immigrants, the language spoken, in your house is different. When my mother would send me to school and would pack my lunch, I mean, I wasn't getting peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I was getting kebabs, and naan, because that's what we ate the night before. And those are the leftovers that I was taking to school. And of course, the kids in school would be like, well, what's that? Or if we're playing outside on the street, if my mom was going to come call me inside, to tell me that it was time to come inside, she wasn't shouting at me in English. She was definitely shouting at me in Urdu, which is our native language. And obviously the kids would be like, ah, ha, ha, like it's just something different. I mean, kids tease and they react in their own very kind of like innocent way to differences. So, as a child of immigrants, as a minority, you are taught very early on that you, in some instances, are different. And so that's one reason you feel like you have one foot in one world and one foot in the other. And then I think the other part of it is immigrant parents, or at least my immigrant parents, they're trying to do the best that they can for their children in whatever way they know how. And the only way they know how is what they were taught back in a completely different country, in a completely different society. And so as a result, they're just like, well, this is what we do. This is what you should do because this is how we were taught, right? And sometimes that is a little different, and the rules that apply to you then become different. And so as a result, you feel like you're straddling two different worlds, Small example, my father was very strict. He was very conservative. And I was not allowed to attend any sort of like school event, no dances, no high school football games, no after school clubs, nothing like that. And, for someone kind of listening to that, it sounds probably very harsh because that's very much a part of a complete academic experience. From my immigrant father's perspective, when it comes to your daughters, you protect them, you keep them in the house. And he was just doing like the best that he could based on what he knew. So, differences like that. I think that these newer generations, I mean, when I look at my cousins who are, barely 10 years younger, their experience is already different than mine. But yeah, you sometimes do feel like you are either on the outside. You also sometimes feel like you have to abide by a completely different set of rules. And it makes you kind of in like this middle ground, this weird gray area,
That really helps for people that don't understand what it's like to be first generation, regardless, what your journey was. Nobody would ever think my mom was first generation. Nobody would ever, I look like a white American, right? And, so when people learn that my grandparents didn't even read or drive, it's like they scratch their head when they look at my grandparents. But I remember growing up and that was one of the her parents, that it is what it was,
Yeah.
And I think that for me, having a deeper understanding of culture, it was very rich because they were very, 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 very poor, and had really interesting lifestyle compared to my father's parents. It was,
Sure.
just almost like the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm not sure if you've ever read it, but
I
it's a
haven't, but I
great
think it
book.
just goes to show that you can't judge a book by its cover. People are a lot deeper than just like their outward facing,
Exactly.
immutable characteristics.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So that was great. So like a couple things, like why esports? I mean, it's so perfect. And I would just love to hear your attraction to that, community besides the global, obvious answer.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of kind of like my journey towards discovering the esports industry, it happened very much as a result of my work, my job. We represent corporate clients, as you mentioned, and we are fortunate enough to represent certain, esports companies. And going into the kind of partner, vendor, attorney, client relationship, I literally knew nothing about esports. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing. And so, I had, like I said, the good fortune to work with some clients. And even in that kind of attorney-client relationship, I only learned about the companies to the extent that I needed to for purposes of supporting their employer-sponsored immigration cases. So taking a step back, as I'm sure you're aware, if a company wants to bring a foreign-born employee over to the United States for purposes of working, then there are a number of immigration, non-immigrant visas that they can file on that foreign employee's behalf. And that is, in a nutshell, the work that we do. We support companies in their employer-sponsored immigration cases. So going back to what I was saying, the knowledge that I gained about these esports companies was really kind of focused on what do I need to know and understand in order to provide appropriate legal support to the corporate client in the form of an individual employee filing. And then this was about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I was just randomly like browsing Netflix, and I came upon a documentary which I can't remember in terms of the title, but I do distinctly recall that that particular docuseries episode focused on the League of Legends esports tournaments, and kind of gave viewers a behind the scenes look at the tournaments, the competitions, and in that documentary, they made references to like the number of viewers, that kind of watched the competitions and how popular it was, around the world. And I think, there was some mention of like Rick Fox owning a team or something like that. And it was like, I didn't realize, I think it was then that I realized how established and popular and large of a thing it was. And I mean, I don't know, maybe I had just been like living under a rock. I'm old, I don't do fun things anymore. I work a lot. And so like, I was just like literally like blown away. And I think it was just kind of like really, really eye-opening because like I said, having no knowledge of the esports industry, I just found it super, super fascinating. And I think the reason that I was even more impacted by learning more about the esports industry and getting a little bit more of a glimpse was because our practice, as mentioned, represents esports clients. And I just had like a different context, like a different perspective in terms of like these, cases that I was working on. So that, that definitely was the beginning of this interest. Not to say that I wasn't interested in the clients prior to that, but that was the beginning of the interest in, I would say, just the industry as a whole, right? And then I, just kind of like through the years in, observing the esports industry more closely by and through like the work that we do, what really, really started to fascinate me was the important and very kind of impactful role that immigration law plays within the esports industry, which I think not a lot of people realize, So this is a industry that is extremely global in nature from what I can tell. And we're talking about, players from around the world, competitions that are taking place around the world, companies that maybe have offices around the world, right? But COVID, I think in particular, has completely changed the way that, esports companies and, leaders and stakeholders navigate, international travel restrictions and requirements, particularly when it comes to competitions, because as a result of COVID, you can have a set of restrictions that apply to folks coming from one country that are completely different from the set of restrictions that apply to players coming from another country. And players from both countries need to attend the same tournament, So from an immigration perspective, navigating that and making sure that you're providing adequate and also real-time support in a tournament style industry where the roster is changing and the outcome is constantly changing has been an amazing and extremely fascinating learning experience for me personally.
Yeah, I would imagine. And why I found this this podcast particularly interesting is I could see an immigration attorney working for a large team or a large company. When you got awarded top women in startups, I mean, talk about navigation. Now, is that esports startups as well?
No, that was not specific to esports.
Okay.
Just startup companies in a variety of different industries and sectors. And yeah, it was quite an honor. I'm still very kind of
and that's just
humbled by that.
For sure. It's such a testament to your work, because I always think like if you can work in startups and be on the ground floor and navigate that and be awarded to that, you can almost do anything.
It is definitely a different set of requirements and considerations when you're working with a startup company that's like a little less established. Sure. So yeah, you do end up offering, kind of like a different type of support in some instances. Yeah. So yeah.
That says a lot about, your just your value system probably as when you're taking on a client. So oh yeah, for sure. So tell me a little bit about who here in the Esports Trade Association would hire you. Where are you a perfect fit?
Oh, I mean, I think that it would probably be either a company that actually creates the game on which some of these tournaments are based, or it could be a team that wants to participate in a competition or a tournament, for two kind of very different reasons, right? So if you're a company, regardless of whether you are in the esports industry or any other, industry, at some point, if you want to hire foreign talent, you're going to need immigration support in order to bring that candidate into the United States. Or alternatively, transfer that candidate from one country to another, in some instances bypassing the United States altogether, depending on whether or not you're a global, company. And then from a team perspective, if you are wanting to travel to a location to participate in a tournament, then, chances are you're going to need some form of immigration in order to be able to enter that country, and then from there, it gets even more complicated. If your team consists of a diverse, player roster, then the requirements to gain entry in any given country may depend on everything from that player's country of birth to where that player is currently located. And it could, differ in terms of whether or not they need like a visitor visa or another type of visa, whether or not they can enter visa free, whether or not they have to quarantine for a certain number of days upon entry. I mean, it gets sometimes very nuanced in this post-COVID universe. So I would say teams and companies would be the top two. We have, however, been fortunate enough to provide assistance to influencers, members of the media, and, that sort of thing as well. So I think that's actually a good question because it kind of goes to the intersectionality of immigration law and the esports industry, right? Like, no matter how unique the need, be it the company, the team, the coach, the player, the influencer, the reporter, the support staff, the logistical staff, because esports tournaments are so global in nature, you're going to have to probably identify a very nuanced and specific immigration strategy, depending on who you are, where you're from, where you're living. And so that to me is kind of like the most fascinating aspect of how immigration plays a role with esports.
It is fascinating. And I would imagine having one lawyer represent that, like for a team, wouldn't be as practical as having, just say, Erickson be part of your team's outsourcing. It would almost seem smarter to have an outsourced firm, i.e. hire you, versus hiring an immigration lawyer to be in-house. It just like outsourcing is the way of the future. I'm seeing people outsourcing their accounting. I'm seeing people outsourcing their bookkeeping. So why not outsource your immigration navigation with your company? Am I onto something there? Is that what?
I think that it really depends on what works best for the individual and or kind of party that we're talking about, right? There are some great firms out there that very much specialize, in legal support for esports companies. And then there are some firms out there who specialize in, the law when it comes to different countries, So yeah. I think it's not necessarily like one size fits all. I think that, companies should make a decision based on kind of the fact pattern that they're dealing with, right? So if they're dealing with immigration support needed for just like their company employees, maybe they need like an engineer, maybe they need like a developer, product manager. That may be one kind of solution, versus if the company needs support in order to travel abroad, participate in a tournament, or something of that nature, they may want to work with folks that are on the ground. So I think that it's not necessarily like one size fits all.
Right. Okay. And you are, so when should we, our members or our community call you? I mean, I know you're leading a department. I believe you have a team behind you. So when should we call you?
I mean, honestly, anytime, the members have a question about um, either anything that has to do with immigration or international travel, I would say. Because I feel like international travel in particular is so unpredictable right now. There are so many rumors, reports, changes, nuances. There are so many changes that are now going into effect just as a result of like the recent variant. And it can be very difficult not only to keep track of all of the changes, but also navigate the impact that those changes have on our ability to enter certain countries. So yeah, I would say uh, definitely when it comes to like international travel. And then obviously, if anybody wants to hire an employee that was born in a foreign country that needs company sponsorship, then that really is kind of like our area of expertise when it comes to our firm.
And that is really great to know, that that's what you represent. And you have such a heart for, I could just feel that you just have such a heart for service. And obviously bullying has been a huge topic in esports. And there's been so many companies that have worked on the bullying and the anti-bullying initiative. So it's really great that you're behind that. What do you know? And, I just bring this up and I know we didn't talk about this, but what about international players' rights? There's a lot of competition. Do you know anything on that topic of just making sure young players are safe on a global level? Do you do anything with that? I don't even know if anybody does, but when I just think about, if you just think about America and, young athletes that are encouraged to drop out of high school and go straight to college and play basketball, I'm just wondering if if there's representation for these very, very, very young global players.
Megan, I honestly don't know. Like I said, I'm very much learning about the esports industry. And that is, I think, a facet that I know nothing about. So wouldn't be able to, intelligently comment on that.
But boy, these are things that it is such an untouched industry in so many ways. There's so much opportunity, and we love having, firms like yours and advocates like yourself come to really help navigate through certain situations. How do I hire somebody from, say, Japan and get them here and have them, a wonderful employee? And that's what, COVID did. Obviously it's been horrendous. And there's been so much change with the technology we've had, like Zoom, where people have really bonded with their overseas colleagues. And, I've talked to people that are going, out of the country, and I've talked to other people that are coming into the country. And what a great resource to have you navigate that in your firm. And then lastly, I just love this question, the 3 fun, most unexpected facts about you. And I loved your answer that one of the most fun things that you've done is lead your team and lead your people. Let's hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. I've been a lawyer for 13 years, 14 years or something like that, but I did not become a people manager until 2019. And it took some getting used to, it was kind of a process by which I realized, okay, so I have some authority or discretion or, whatever you want to call it. And when that started to kind of sink in, I realized that I was, I realized I was actually in a position where I could really prevent people from having the type of negative experiences that I had. throughout the course of my career. Just, as a woman, as a woman of color. And I think when that sunk in, I kind of made a promise to myself that, the people on my team would never have to experience the things that I experienced. And I think that's the thing that I'm the most proud of, the team that I have the honor of working with, as well as the fact that, our firm is so committed to awareness, diversity, inclusion, equity, and just having the conversation, and that I think has probably been the single most rewarding thing for me in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, one of the books I read, one of probably the best books I've read on leadership is Developing Your Leader Within by John Maxwell. And he's just an advocate on, if you don't love who you're working with and you don't love who you're leading, just stop.
Yeah.
And the culture has really changed.
I agree. I mean, people are having conversations that I would have never fathomed, would take place in the workplace. And I think there's still a very long way to go. Mm-hmm. But I think the fact that those conversations are taking place is such a positive step in the right direction. Awareness is key. So I find that to be really encouraging.
Well, it's amazing what you've done in 13 years. And, I can really feel your passion. And I'm also looking forward to seeing you in Chicago. You're coming to our conference.
I am coming to your conference, travel restrictions permitting. So yeah, I can't wait.
That's true. That's true. We didn't really touch upon how much COVID has challenged things, and boy, no one can predict what's next, but it's really also great to have you as an advocate for that here at the association. Yeah, we had a great event. We had no post-COVID cases, zero.
That's great. That's great.
Yes. Yeah. So we were very fortunate. We're having the same event August, I want to say 23rd is our main day, full of sessions. And I think you've also put in a request to potentially speak if we have a legal panel. If we haven't, you should. If you haven't, you should speak at the conference.
Okay.
It's a great topic to speak on, immigration. We just, we are a very, very global industry, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Esports Trade Association has a national focus, but we have international members joining all the time.
Sure.
So, and it's been really informative to have you here. Is there anything more that you would like to share about Erickson, your firm? We didn't really cover Erickson Immigration Group, but if you'd like to share a little bit about the firm and yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for that. So the firm is exclusively immigration law firm. We focus on employment-based immigration. We represent, some very cool clients in a diverse range of industries that we're very, very proud to work with. We have, colleagues around the world: Dublin, Singapore, Australia, London, Mexico City. I hope I'm not forgetting any locations. And, just knock on wood, a great group of people who are super committed to the clients, to doing a good job, who really care, about the service that's being provided. And that is kind of what inspires me on a day-to-day basis. We are headquartered in Washington, D.C., so it's very cold outside. And yeah.
Well, thank you, Hiba. It's just a pleasure to have you and have your firm joining our association. A big welcome. And if anybody wants to reach you, what are your handles?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Hiba Anver. If you want to find me on Twitter, it's at HibsA, so at HIBZA. And then my work email address is hiba@eiglaw.com. It's HIBA. So just hiba@eiglaw.com.
Well, hit her up. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Megan.
You're welcome.